Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Buffalo, and I'm a member of the Samson Cree Nation just north of here in Treaty 6. And I'm also a proud member of the Alberta Next Panel. And today, we acknowledge that we are on Treaty 7 with the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy of Siksika, Kainai, Piikani Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation and the Stoney Nakoda Nations, Goodstoney, Bearspaw, and Chiniki, as well as we want to acknowledge and recognize Métis Region, Region number 3. So for all the people who have come before us, and all the people who will come after us, and all who are here tonight, let's have a great discussion about our great province. I want to introduce our moderator, my former teammate from the Junior B days, Bruce McAllister.
Thanks, Stephen. You know, I didn't realize that Junior B was something you sort of hung on the mantle as to be proud of your career accomplishments. I just learned tonight that Grant Fagerheim on our panel, Grant, can you put your hand up? He played like 8 games for the New York Islanders back in the day. So, Stephen, that far outweighs the Junior B Medicine Hat Cubs, so I can tell you that. But hey, good evening, Airdrie. Good to see you all. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Bruce McAllister, and I'm happy to be your moderator tonight. The Premier is here with us tonight. Look forward to hearing from her. We have assembled an amazing panel. You've met Stephen. These are Albertans just like you. They care deeply about this province. They come from a variety of professions and walks of life, and I promise throughout the evening you'll hear from all of them. We'll find a way to work them all in as we hear from you, but I'll introduce them momentarily. First, let me go over a few housekeeping rules. Most of these don't apply to the great majority of you, but I have to say it. When we get to the point where you come up to the microphones, we just ask everybody to be respectful, mindful of language and things like that as we have our discussion. People will want to come up, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It's happened at every panel. We ask that you limit yourselves to 1. If you have a burning desire to speak to a second issue or something like that, just please let anybody go that hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet, and then we don't have a problem with it. And we ask you to keep your questions on topic. So if it's about something that isn't to do with Alberta's relationship with Ottawa and Alberta Next and the issues we're looking into, we'll find a way to address it. I know that your MLA, Angela Pitt, is here, and her staff is probably with her. We'll address those issues, but we're going to do our best to stay on topic. So with that, let's meet our panel. First, the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, as our chair. The MLA for Leduc-Beaumont, Brandon Lunty. The President of Questerre Energy, Michael Binion, is with us. The newly elected MLA for Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills, Tara Sawyer, sits on the panel. Dr. Benny Zhu is a registered acupuncturist with 30 years' experience. We love his expertise. Adam Legg, the President of the Business Council of Alberta, is here. My good friend Stephen Buffalo, you've met, President and CEO of the Indian Resource Council of Canada. The Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz, on the panel. University of Calgary economics professor, and the only guy I think that I've met that knows more on facts than the Premier sometimes, Trevor Toome, is on the panel. It's a close one between them. The Honourable Bruce MacDonald, the former Alberta Court of Appeal Justice, that was back in 09 to 23. Bruce is here. Thank you, Your Honour. Dr. Aiken Okaswati, a family and ER doctor in Didsbury. Melody Garner-Skiba, who is just a fantastic advocate for agriculture and the former president of the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce. The chair of the Premier's Council of Multiculturalism is Sumita Anand. Andrew Judson is with the Fraser Institute and has a wealth of experience on all these issues. Andrew, thank you. A guy I guess I have to introduce now is a former New York Islander. and the President and CEO of Whitecap Resources, Grant Fagerheim. Grant, thanks. So I'm going to explain how things go tonight and how we're going to be able to hear from you and have a great conversation. But I think the first thing we ought to do is call Premier Smith up to say good evening and set the tone for us. Premier?
Well, thanks, Bruce, once again for moderating us this evening, and good evening. Thank you all for coming. I am so happy to be here with my fellow Alberta Next panelists tonight and on a few other nights where we've hit almost, I guess we've hit the four corners of the province participating in these important discussions and engaging directly with you. We've got a few more left. We've got Grand Prairie this week and then Calgary and then an online, and we'll be wrapped up by October the 1st. I know that there's lots of other places you could have been this evening as we are continuing to see summer linger on, and so thank you for spending the evening with us. We all know that Alberta has grown a lot in recent years, but few communities have grown faster than Airdrie, as your MLA, Angela Pitt, keeps on telling us as she advocates for the various needs that we have in this community. The people who live here and the people who are flocking here know exactly what makes Airdrie so appealing. It's a welcoming and affordable community with great amenities and a quality of life that is hard to beat. These qualities are worth protecting, and this growing community deserves the best future that we can give it. And tonight is your chance to help us shape that future. And I do want to thank you all for coming out to engage with us in this really important process. The conversations that we have this evening and throughout the Alberta Next engagement period will help shape the future of our province. In fact, I'd encourage you to go and have a look at the last time the government did this. It was called the Fair Deal Panel. And with consultation with Albertans, they came up with 25 recommendations that have guided a lot of our work in the last 5 years. For instance, we had the equalization referendum. The panel wanted us to reduce internal trade barriers, and we have done that across the country. They wanted us to create economic corridors, and we have signed many economics corridors agreements, most recently with Saskatchewan, Ontario, and the Yukon. They wanted us to challenge federal legislation in our areas of jurisdiction, and I think, I'm keeping count, I think we've got 15 lawsuits going in that regard. They wanted us to establish a chief firearms officer, which we did, create a presence in Ottawa, which we have, diversify our energy sector, which again we have done that in spades, and relentlessly pursue more market access. That's continuing on. We also referenda and citizen-initiated referenda also came out of that initial Fair Deal panel process. That's just a couple of examples. For the last 10 years, as we know, Ottawa has taken direct aim at Alberta's core industries. From C-69 to the tanker ban, the oil and gas emission cap, which as we all know works like a production cap, and also their net zero mandates on electricity and vehicles. In just the last 10 years alone, more than $500 billion in global investment capital destined for our resource sector has disappeared. That has cost us hundreds of thousands of jobs, hundreds of billions in GDP, and resource royalties that would have gone to help support healthcare, education, and public infrastructure. If Canada is to be a strong and unified country, it must include a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, able to pursue our own potential without being held back by our own country. So regardless of what each of us believes about these issues or the path that we think is best, we as Albertans must be able to respectfully debate and discuss the issues here as well as with our family and friends and neighbours. And I know that if we do that, in the end, our province will be able to find the best solutions to the immense challenges that we face. And we will come out of it stronger and freer as a result. I'll always put my faith in Albertans to find the right path. I trust you, and I look forward to hearing from you tonight and from Albertans across the province as we wind up this process. Back over to Bruce.
Thank you, Premier. Okay, like I said, we have 6 topics up for discussion tonight, and if yours isn't one of them and you have an idea about our relationship with Ottawa and things that we might do differently, there'll be time at the end where we have some free time to go back to those topics that we didn't quite finish because we ran out of time, and also if you have something on your minds to do with Ottawa, we can do it then. But the 6 topics tonight will be equalization and transfers, the Alberta Pension Plan, a provincial police force, constitutional changes, immigration reform, and provincial tax collection. So what we do is we play a video. It's maybe 3 minutes or so on the topic to try to give you, both sides of it, the pros and cons. And while that's playing, you're welcome to line up at one of the 2 microphones in the room on either side. If that's the video that you want to speak to, by all means, come on up, and then we'll just moderate back and forth. And as I said, if you want to make a comment, that's fine. If you want to ask a question, we'll have the Premier or somebody, if it's an appropriate question, we'll have them address it certainly on the panel. And again, this is about our province's future with Ottawa. So look forward to a great discussion. I can already tell it's going to be a great discussion because we were in Lethbridge. We loved Lethbridge, but the air conditioner didn't work. And let me tell you, it's heated enough without like 80 degrees in the room. So with that, let's have some fun. Let's have a great civil discussion on Alberta and how we might make this wonderful province even better. The first video of the evening we're going to roll is on equalization and transfers. Here we go.
Our next topic is reforming federal equalization and transfers. Since 2005, Alberta taxpayers have contributed, on average, $23 billion more per year to the federal government in federal taxes than they received back in projects, benefits, and other spending from Ottawa. That's a net loss to Albertans of nearly $500 billion in just 20 years. Most of those redistributed Alberta tax dollars are spent by Ottawa and Quebec and other liberal-leaning provinces across the country. And part of that massive fiscal transfer out of Alberta comes through the Federal Equalization Program, which has seen Alberta pay over $67 billion into the program since 1957, while receiving back not a single penny since 1965. In 2021, Albertans voted in a referendum to remove equalization from the Constitution, but Ottawa completely ignored us. So what next? Alberta can't stop these federal transfers on its own. The Alberta government doesn't write a check to Ottawa each year, and we can't ask Albertans to stop paying their federal taxes. The fact is, fixing this problem will require political support from other provinces. One option that would be appealing to most other provinces is to have the provinces collect a larger share of overall taxes. This is how it could work. Currently, Ottawa collects over 60% of all the federal and provincial taxes that Canadians pay. The Ottawa bureaucracy takes its portion, with the remainder inefficiently and unequally distributed to the provinces. The dollars we do get back have a lot of strings attached, forcing us to run our provincial programs and build infrastructure the way Ottawa wants us to. No provinces want that, especially the big ones like Quebec, Ontario, BC, and Alberta. What if we cut out the middleman and instead had provincial governments that are responsible for delivering health, education, and social services collect around 60% of all taxes, with Ottawa receiving the rest? Ottawa, in turn, would be able to end most transfer programs to the provinces, along with all the strings, bureaucracy, and waste attached to them. Quebec has already proposed having the federal government let provinces keep GST revenue generated in their provinces in return for ending the federal health transfer. Seems like a great idea. Why not apply that same logic to all federal transfers? Less money collected and wasted in Ottawa. Less federal transfers with only a modest amount of equalization for the smallest provinces and territories that actually need it. And more funds for provincial health, education, and other programs, without strings attached by Ottawa's politicians and bureaucrats. That seems like something most provinces could rally behind. So what say you, Alberta? Should Alberta take a lead role in working with the other provinces to reform federal transfers and equalization by having the provinces collect a larger share of overall taxes, with Ottawa collecting less? And are there any other strategies Alberta should be looking at to alleviate the massive federal fiscal drain to Alberta? For more information, visit alberta.ca/next.
Okay, looks like we've got a few people at the first microphone. Just remind everybody there are two, and when you come and I call on you, you've got 45 seconds. That's the sweet spot we tried to settle on to get your comment out or your question asked. And yeah, we'll stick to the topics and have a great night. So, sir, you ready to kick us off?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
A recent Angus Reid poll found that only 13% of Albertans have a relationship with Ottawa as a top concern. I am very worried that this panel is serving no function other than to advance and strengthen the separatist rhetoric. Premier Smith, you have said you are against separatism. However, you made it easier for separatists to hold a referendum. You spoke out against Elections Alberta in favour of the separatists, and you supported the separatists in court with a government lawyer. You have stated you are appeasing the separatists to avoid splitting your party and risking your hold on power. And now you are pushing these policies right out of the separatist playbook. You continue to push identity politics, ideology-driven policy, and grievance politics where everything is somebody else's fault. I have one question for the panel. Do any members of the panel, considering both the positives and negatives, feel that the province should not proceed with any of the proposed policies, or is the panel only interested in pushing a one-sided predetermined outcome?
I'm going to place you as not in favor of the discussion tonight in that category. Thank you, sir, for kicking us off. Okay. Let's go over. You've used your 45 seconds, sir.
Well, so, let me just, if I may.
Okay.
The issue of equalization is not just an Alberta issue, and it's not just a Quebec issue. It is also a Newfoundland and Labrador issue. When they looked at the way in which they are a net payer into Confederation, even though they're one of our smallest provinces with one of our most highly indebted governments, they launched a lawsuit saying that they deserve the same equal per capita transfers as big provinces like Ontario, Quebec, and others. British Columbia joined them in that lawsuit, as did Saskatchewan. And so when you look at the equalization formula, it has not changed since 2007. It's changed multiple times over the years. It is stacked against the smaller provinces. And I must say, I don't think it was ever intended that small provinces should transfer money to Ottawa so that it could be distributed into large provinces. I don't think that was what the intention is. And I think Albertans have voted on that. And we're trying to find multiple ways to find partners to be able to address that.
Thanks for kicking us off. All right, let's go over here.
Okay. On October 18, 2021, there was a referendum of equalization payments forwarded to Albertans to vote on. 290 municipalities in Alberta, 280 municipalities said yes, 6 said no, and 4 municipalities were not applicable. So that was a 61.88% favour. What I read was the next step for the Alberta government would be to pass an amendment to the Constitution and Legislation Assembly of Alberta, triggering a binding obligation on the Government of Canada to negotiate that amendment with the province in good faith. Now, the eastern provinces have had their hands out for our transfer payments and yet have done everything in their power to destroy Alberta economy. Has there been any substantial progress on coastal pipelines being built, pipelines going east, or BC 69 being repealed? The east blocks us all the time. There is no more time for excuses that things aren't getting accomplished. What is your timeline in negotiating this change?
That's it. Thank you. Premier, I'll let you address it, and then I'd like to ask Michael Binion a question.
Sure. I would say that I think there was a hope that if we passed a referendum question on equalization, that it would obligate the other provinces to deal with it. And it didn't happen. So we may have to get the judge to weigh in on why that was. I think it was worth it to give it a try. And I think we did our part. We're trying now different ways to be able to address that, and that was what I mentioned in the previous answer. When it comes to where we find ourselves now, I am hopeful once again that with a new person at the helm of the federal government, that they've now realized that the world has changed. Our partners around the world, our allies and trading partners, are desperate for Canadian energy. They don't want to have to rely on despotic regimes. The Americans want to restart the discussion around Keystone XL. And what you're seeing is that every single province has identified resource projects that they want to be able to develop, which has led to the first announcement of the major projects list. And we are hoping that we can get a pipeline on the second announcement of the major projects list. That's what we're working towards. The Prime Minister wants to have a new list put forward on November the 16th in time for Grey Cup. And so I'm going to work in that process in good faith. And so that's my deadline. That's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Premier. So every time this topic comes up, somebody brings up Quebec, and rightfully so, because there are some inequities, certainly to Alberta and the other provinces. Nobody knows that better than Michael Binion. Michael, can you speak to your experience and some of the things that you've heard and like to see addressed?
Sure. Maybe I'll address the first person's comment a little bit as well about, or we all have a predetermined idea on this panel. I've made the point before that my wife is quite hardcore on some of this issue, and she would be happy, like Ralph Klein, to let all those Eastern bastards freeze in the dark, but not me. I don't agree with that. I have always felt that the equalization was something that allowed smaller provinces to be able to fulfill their provincial jurisdiction and not need to lobby the federal government to interfere and get involved in provincial jurisdiction. I've always felt that was very beneficial for Alberta. My concerns right now, I think, are twofold. One is that in spite of that, the federal government is still interfering in our jurisdiction, so it feels like the grand bargain is not working. And my second thing is that, as Bruce is talking about, we discovered gas in Quebec and we've been unable to produce it. And we had at least one premier say publicly, why would Quebec produce its own oil and gas when we'd only have to give back some of it through equalization? We should wait until we separate to do that. And so that tells me there's something broken in the formula and we should do something about it.
Michael, thank you. So I'll come to Trevor for some numbers in a moment, but the point of this tonight is to hear from as many of you as possible. So just before I pick it back up at the microphone, I do notice some of our seniors in the crowd without a chair. I'm sure some of you would love to change if you could, and we do have some seats in the overflow room. Hate to see you all have to stand. Anyway, with that, okay, your turn.
First, thank you, Premier Smith and panel, for giving Albertans voices to what's going on with our province. I wanted to address equalization and the fact that the eastern provinces, even the smaller provinces, are gaming the system. They are lowering their effective tax base. They're offering tax incentives. They're not developing their resources the way we are in Alberta. And I just want somebody to address not just Quebec. Quebec has a $7 a day daycare. My daughter is paying thousands of dollars for her daycare. And they would have a budget deficit if they had no transfer payments. So without that surplus, with having a surplus really bothers me that Quebec is having a budget surplus when other provinces are, and they're gaming the system.
I was going to try and save Trevor for a bit, but you've raised a great point. It's a good time to bring him in because he gives an excellent example. Trevor, can you weigh in here?
Yeah, a couple points actually in response to that. First, having a program like equalization, it's there to try and provide support to provinces that have weaker economies or have trouble raising revenue to deliver public services. But as you noted, that also creates an incentive to maybe artificially appear as though you might have small fiscal capacity. There's some evidence that you might adopt higher tax rates, worse economic policies. But the best example, I think, is Quebec hydro prices. You know, revenues from hydroelectricity is a big resource revenue for that province. But you can choose how much you're charging for electricity. And Quebec has the lowest, by a wide margin, electricity price in the country. And if they were to just increase that by 2 cents a kilowatt hour, they'd still be the lowest power price jurisdiction in the country. But that would raise their hydroelectricity revenues by enough that their equalization payment would fall by a little over $4 billion this year. Right? So very small changes in power prices can have very large effects on the formula. And that is a problem. I think it's a problem for what the intent of the program is, to support provinces that need it. And there is some sensible changes that could be made. And I think what we want to hear from you today is also what ideas you might have to change it in a way that makes it achieve its objectives.
Excellent. What a great observation, though. This is what we're hearing as we travel around. Let's go over here.
Yes, my understanding of the equalization formula is that the revenue side going to the province is not the actual revenue coming in, it's the ability of the province to tax. So as a result, Alberta gets dinged for a provincial sales tax when they don't even collect it. So what are you going to do about something like that? It's not fair.
Well, what if we were to change the formula so that it also includes some consideration for those provinces that don't develop their resources, and we impute the value of what the royalties would be if they develop their mines or develop their natural gas? Those are the kind of conversations we need to have. My personal view is that we should decide that once you become a big, powerful province over a certain population and economic threshold, it no longer applies. British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario and Quebec should not be able to qualify for equalization. The fact that Newfoundland and Labrador and also Saskatchewan are net payers also shows you that economies that develop their resources can also get above that threshold. And then we've got to be cultivating the right decisions in some of those smaller provinces. But if we were to shrink the programs, though it really was just supporting the small provinces with smaller capacity, smaller population, then I think we could manage that. And that's what I would be hoping to advocate for.
All ideas on the table tonight, for sure. Go ahead.
Premier, you have declared that your marching orders regarding Alberta independence are based upon your pursuit of a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, a principle supposedly adopted at the UCP's founding convention. On X, Peter McCaffrey, president of the Alberta Institute, offers a different view of the founding AGM by saying, quote, "It was one of the proposed founding principles of the party, but it was actually the only principle rejected by the grassroots membership at the party's founding AGM," quote. End quote. This past May, City News reported that UCP members polled 65% in favor of leaving Canada rather than wasting time negotiating with those who have no interest in killing their golden goose. Why is the membership being force-fed a principle that was rejected by the grassroots membership at the founding AGM?
Just maybe on process, Premier.
There are certain questions that have to be put to a general referendum of the people. And political parties try to find ways to develop policies around areas where they can agree. And this is a very polarizing issue. There is a current referendum petition that is going forward. It's Thomas Lukasic's. It's asking the question, do you want to remain in Canada? And remember, a remain question is a yes-no question. So it is a referendum question because we have to think through what the consequences are if the answer to that is no. I'm watching it with interest, as I'm sure everybody else is, but that really is the way that you deal with these kinds of foundational issues, is through a province-wide referendum if there's enough support for it, and we're waiting to see if there is.
Excellent. We might be able to get through the last couple of people before we go to the next topic. Let's go over here.
Hi, I just want to say that this panel is reeking of nothing but separation. I'm shocked that we would need our own immigration policy when we have one. Is it perfect? No, but we should be working with other governments. You, Danielle Smith, wanted to double our population to 10 million. Now you're backtracking. You want a change in equalization payments, and yet how about we stop subsidizing the oil and gas industry of $20 billion? We could do a lot more money with that.
Hang on. You'll have a chance to come up to immigration and other issues if you'd like and propose what you would like to do differently. And maybe it's just leave it as it is. But I can tell you from traveling around Alberta, people don't want to leave it as it is. It isn't working. Was there one more over here or no? No longer? Okay. So we do a straw poll on every subject. And what's amazing to me, every single time, the poll results and the people at the mic, for at least the first subject, are way different. It's almost uncanny. So here's the first question. Should Alberta take a lead role in working with the other provinces to reform federal transfers and equalization? Who says yes? Yeah. Who says no? And the yeas have it. We're off and running, folks. We're going to have a great night. The next video is on a proposed Alberta pension plan. Here you go.
Our next topic is creating an Alberta pension plan with the same or better benefits than the Canada pension plan. With a younger and more productive workforce, Alberta workers contribute about $3 billion more each year to the Canada pension plan than Alberta seniors receive in benefits. Alberta has the constitutional right to exit the CPP. And if we did, federal legislation says that Alberta would be entitled to a sizable share of the CPP assets that we could use to start our own provincial pension plan, so long as we guarantee comparable pension benefits for seniors. Quebec made the decision to start its own pension plan decades ago, and they have an agreement with Ottawa so that all retirees receive their full pension benefits, whether they worked in Quebec, retired there, or some mix of both. Alberta could negotiate a similar arrangement with Ottawa if we created our own pension plan. There are more factors to consider as well. Currently, virtually all investment decisions and management of the CPP is conducted by folks working in Ottawa and Toronto rather than Alberta. While the CPP's mandate is to maximize pension returns, in recent years, the CPP annual reports have shown an increasing focus on emissions reductions and DEI concerns, which do not always result in the highest rate of returns for the pension plan. CPP management has also become bloated and expensive. 20 years ago, the CPP had only 150 employees, with operating costs of $118 million. Today, it has ballooned to more than 2,100 employees with operating costs of about $6 billion. If Alberta opted to commence its own pension plan, the fund would be managed out of Alberta by Albertans, and investments could be focused exclusively on maximizing returns rather than adjusting for carbon dioxide and DEI-related objectives. With that all said, the CPP has consistently generated healthy returns and is a stable and critical source of income for seniors in Alberta and Canada. So, what are the benefits of Alberta choosing to withdraw from the CPP to create its own pension plan? 1. A big upfront payout. Alberta would get back a significant lump sum by exiting the CPP. The chief actuary in Ottawa has indicated our share would be at least $140 billion. That's plenty to start and build a strong Alberta pension plan from day one. 2. Better benefits for seniors, lower premiums for Alberta workers. Thanks to our younger, more productive population, an Alberta pension plan could result in Alberta workers paying lower pension premiums on their paychecks, or seniors enjoying higher pension benefits, or a mix of both. 3. Local control and boosting our economy. An Alberta pension plan would be managed right here at home, creating more jobs and growing Alberta's financial sector. We would also be insulated from the economic and demographic decline in Canada. Our investment decisions could also be steered clear of ideological decision-making and instead remain focused on the long-term rate of return for Alberta pensioners. But there are some risks to consider. 1. Uncertain payout. The CPP exit rules aren't clear in the federal legislation, and Ottawa is notoriously anti-Alberta with its decisions. So the size of the lump sum Alberta is offered could be lower than it should be. This could result in a lengthy court battle with the federal government, and it could lower our ability to increase benefit payments for seniors or lower premiums for workers. 2. Long-term risk. As with any pension plan, if the plan is mismanaged or Alberta's economy and demographics fall behind Canada, premiums would have to rise in the future in order to guarantee our seniors the same benefits they enjoy today under the CPP. Regardless, as with Quebec, Alberta's government would still be able to guarantee that an Alberta pension plan provide the same or better benefits to Alberta seniors as they now enjoy under the CPP. 3. Portability concerns. The Quebec pension plan and CPP have an agreement in place to ensure pensioners get the same single pension, regardless of where they worked or lived in Canada during their career. Alberta would expect a similar arrangement with Ottawa, but it is not guaranteed. So, should Alberta withdraw from the CPP and use Alberta's portion of the CPP to create our own Alberta pension plan? Or should we continue with the CPP as we do now?
I'll tell you that this one sometimes gets gets real personal for people. So anyway, prepared to have a good discussion on it. And this time we'll start right here, right in front of me. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, panel. My name is Dale. Firstly, I fully support the Alberta government taking over the Canada Pension Plan. For me, it is a question of who do you trust? Do you trust the government that has a consistent track record of mismanaging immigration, housing, public safety, implementing environmental inequalities, protecting the sanctity of the Canada Health Act, reckless fiscal spending, and the list just goes on. Just yesterday, the federal Liberal government announced Build Canada Homes, and will spend $13 billion, that's with the B, on 4,000 homes. That's an average of $3.25 million for each affordable home. Or Do you trust a Conservative government that strives to listen to its people, prudently manage finances, and deliver what is best for Albertans made in Alberta? In conclusion, where can I get my lawn sign for Ottawa to keep their hands off my CPP?
I owe that man $20. Over here.
Thank you.
Hey, is that Andy Crooks by any chance?
Yeah.
This is a famous constitutional lawyer and everything else. Good to see you, Mr. Crooks.
My biggest claim to fame was I was one of the signatories of the firewall letter.
That's right.
All of the ideas tonight and in that letter were good. The pension idea was probably the best. Ralph Klein agreed. But he said, and he was right, there was no political support for that. To quote Pogo, so some of us would remember Pogo, I have met the enemy and it is us. We're Albertans. Politicians don't lead us, we lead politicians. It's time for us to stand up, tell Ottawa, we can look after our money. Thanks.
Have you ever considered a career in law or politics? Andy? So good. Look, we've got some great panelists on this, but we've got some lines too. So let's go here first.
Oh, Premier Smith, you don't need these panels to find out what Alberta needs to do. You just need to follow through with the advice you gave Kenny 6 years ago in 2019 in a newspaper article you penned entitled, How Alberta Can Stop Acting Like Canada's Doormat. You told him to implement virtually all the topics that are being raised in this panel, which now as Premier you have failed to act on. All hat, no cattle. With respect to independence, you have said, my job is to bring these numbers down. My job is to make sure that it doesn't get to yes. Accordingly, everything you do on this file, including these panels, needs to be understood in that context. Or as legal scholar Bruce Pardy has said, these panels are a distraction to take the air out of the tires of the independence movement. So, Premier, in your motivation to listen to the people or to bring the temperature down, your words again, with respect to support for Alberta independence. Thank you.
If I'm
Go ahead.
Well, I guess the way I look at it, I mean, Andy was a mentor of mine all those years ago, and I have been an enthusiast of the firewall proposals for, I guess it's going on, 25 years now. But you have to remember that part of the process of getting political consensus is that you can't just talk at political gatherings and with the really hyper-engaged individuals who've been following this for 25 years. You have to make sure that the ideas also have support of the general public. So that's what we're doing, is that these ideas have kept on coming up year after year after year, and we want to hear if there's a public appetite for us to move forward on them. So that's what we're going to do. And it just happens to be the case, in my view, that if we start acting in our areas of jurisdiction, taking back the things that we should be managing, similar to Quebec, and if we get a new arrangement with Ottawa where they treat us with respect, I just think it will be the case that people will have renewed hope in Canada. I've got to at least try for that, and so I've been very transparent that I'm going to try for it. But ultimately, if I fail, then it's going to be up to Albertans to decide what the next steps are. And that's what we're also consulting on through this process.
Super. Over here.
Hi, panel. Premier is always nervous when I come up and ask a question. Yeah, it's Marty up north. You can't see me, it's Marty. So I agree with Andy. I think, to me, the pension plan is the no-brainer of all these proposals. I mean, you said it right at the beginning of the little video. It's, we're contributing $9 billion and getting $6 back, which by definition means that we could do it today without that money that's in the fund. The money that's in the fund is gravy, and then I understand, sure, we want it back, but even without that money in the fund, we can do this today. When I started out here working, my contribution rate was 1.9%. My kids today are contributing 5.95%. It's being mismanaged, and I don't think they'll have a pension in the future. So it's a no-brainer.
Thanks, Marty. Hey, you know who might add with some of those numbers? I think the Fraser Institute has done some work on this. Andrew, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce, and good evening, and thanks all for coming. This, as Bruce said, to echo his comments, has been a hot button. It's been an emotional issue. I think perhaps in this room a little more in support of than what we've been hearing back and experiencing some of our other meetings. And so, at least what I've tried to do is convey to people that setting aside the emotion, and this is a big deal, it's very personal, it's their funds, it's their retirement, but the math is straightforward. And there's just no question that a Alberta pension would be viable and sustainable and successful. What Bruce is referring to on the 14th of July, the Fraser Institute published a report from our Alberta analysts on the economics and math behind this implementation. There's just no question that an Alberta contributor would see their contribution rates fall, their benefits rise. And I just point out one other thing for the gentleman here. We had a gentleman come to this microphone. I want to tell you he was in Fort McMurray, and he told us a story how his father was a federal civil servant in the finance department in the late 70s, and he was advised by his dad to stand on his own financially and get his own pension plan because the federal CPP was going to fail in his concerns. And it turned out not to be the case, didn't happen, but I'll tell you that the reason it didn't is this province and this energy industry and largely the oil sands. And so I would put it to you that we've already bailed out the CPP once, and I think we can stand confidently in our capacity to run our own program.
Thanks, Andrew. It's right out here. Go ahead.
I'd like to start off by saying that we have to remember that the Canada Pension Plan belongs to Canadians. It does not belong to a province. It does not belong to the federal government either. My concern with your approach, Danielle, is that you've disregarded, once again, the needs of low-income seniors. You've suggested that a $10,000 bonus be given. You give $10,000 to a low-income senior, they lose their GIS. They also lose the Alberta Seniors Benefit. They also pay taxes on that, about $2,200. In the spate of 2 years, that $10,000 will be clawed back by the government. The other thing is that $3 billion, there are hundreds of thousands of temporary foreign workers and temporary interprovincial workers in this province. That money, when they retire, is debited towards their province or to the country, not to this province.
Thank you, sir. We're getting dangerously close to the minute 15, minute and a half, so I'm just going to ask everyone to do their best to do 45. Premier, do you want to address that one? And then I want to call on Trevor on this topic.
Well, I think Michael might have something to add on this too, because I think one of the issues that we have is that there is a bit of a mythology about how well run the CPP is, and it may well have been. Back when it first started and it was invested in exchange-traded funds and had a low management expense ratio. But now that it has grown to a point where there's thousands of employees and $6 billion worth of management fees, and it's actually making less money than it would have than when it was invested passively, I think we have to recalibrate on that. I think Michael has a little bit more to add on it, though.
Go ahead.
Well, so my company's listed on the Oslo Stock Exchange. I go there 3 times a year. So my last trip, I had the benefit of meeting the chief economist for one of the largest banks, who is one of the 3 people on the committee for the Norwegian Sovereign Fund, which is the largest sovereign fund in the world. It's over $2 trillion now. 23% of government spending now is paid for by the returns on that fund. That's how well they've done with it. But the interesting thing of that their fund being the largest in the world is also probably one of the cheapest to run. First of all, it's fully funded, and it's almost all in exchange-traded funds, passively managed funds, very, very inexpensive, probably fewer employees than the Canada Pension Plan has. And then I just would go on to say that I think that one of the biggest things that I've noted in these hearings with people that are these panels where the people are very emotional about their Canada Pension Plan, is that there's a misunderstanding that the pension plan is not funded. It's partially funded. That's used to keep your contribution down rate lower, but at the end of the day, you're relying on a government guarantee to force younger workers to pay for your pension later. There's no money there sitting there for you. It's all a government guarantee.
Thanks, Michael. Trevor, I'm going to save you for a minute, and let's go over here.
Yeah, I think the pension, my simple question is, this is a no-brainer. I'm self-employed. I've lived in Alberta since 2008. There is no way to even make a choice, you have to contribute to the CPP. Okay? So then the first step would be to start with a choice. You have a kind of APP already in place. I did some consulting work for them a long time ago. So I think that would be how you'd start. You got to get this ball going. You don't need any approval from Ottawa. I went to the University of Ottawa. I even asked Parizeau, Jacques Parizeau, who was speaking there, what motivated you in the 60s to take over the finances? He said, well, I'm an economist. I didn't trust the politicians. I didn't feel we were getting a good deal. Okay? And that's from Parizeau himself, who, of course, set everything up for Quebec. So I think this is a no-brainer. How are you going to, what timeline are you going to have? Because this has now been going on since 2019.
Thank you.
Okay?
Trevor?
Yeah, I'll just jump in with a couple of points. Maybe first of why Quebec started theirs in the first place. Lots of complicated reasons, of course, but one of them was that they wanted control of a fund that they could use to invest in domestic economic development initiatives, which I think is a problem, right? It's not maximizing returns, and they have had lower returns in Quebec than the CPP, and that's in part why they have higher contribution rates compared to the rest of the country. And I have a lot of time for concerns around the CPP not being a very efficiently run fund. I think any article Andrew Coyne has written on the topic is well worth your time, and there's a lot of concerns there for sure. But what's most important for Alberta to think about on this policy is demographics. Right? The reason why a pension plan here would have some advantages relative to a CPP is that we're younger than the rest of the country. We have about 3 workers per recipient, whereas nationally it's about 2.5 workers per recipient. And that might not sound like a lot, but that's a huge amount. That's the difference between maybe a 10% contribution rate versus an 8.2% contribution rate. Just that little change alone. So demographics gives us an advantage today. And then the trade-off, and all policies have trade-offs. The trade-off is some risk. The risk around what do demographics look like in the province decades from now. Quebec was younger than the national average originally. Now it's not, and so it has a higher contribution rate as a result. But that's what should be going through our head, the benefit of a lower contribution rate today because of strong demographics, and then we just need to ask what we think the province will look like down the line.
Okay, this one we always have more people, so if we don't get to everybody, you can come back at the end and re-raise it, but go ahead.
Thanks. Hi. This question is actually for you, Dr. Tomes. I'd like to thank you for the detailed explanation of both the benefits and the downsides of splitting up the CPP program in your 2023 analysis. However, as you outlined in your July 2025 article, the Alberta pension plan is but one of the issues up for discussion. Would you please explain why you believe an independent Alberta would be a poor Alberta?
I don't know that you ever said that, Trevor, but jump in if you want.
Well, that was the article's headline, and so I'll concede that generic point. The article was mainly about a simple but I think important point, which is that when there are frictions for businesses trying to trade across provincial borders, that lowers productivity and that shrinks the size of the Canadian economy. And so anytime we're pursuing policies that increase how big those frictions are, there's an economic cost that comes with that in the form of lower productivity. It wasn't meant or purporting to be a comprehensive analysis of this scenario in the future of what a separate Alberta would look like economically. It was just noting that internal trade frictions are real, they do drag on productivity, and that's an important consideration.
But fair question. Thank you. Over here.
Thank you so much for doing this, and to the panelists and Premier Smith. Man, love your leadership. The figure that caught my attention in that video was the payout, the 140. You just spent some time with Prime Minister Carney. I'm wondering how warm he is to this conversation, and if we have any indication of what that payout might be or might not be. But I also really appreciated Marty's comments that we can get this done even without that payout. But just kind of curious about what it might be.
Well, thanks for the question. I would say we're still consulting, and we wouldn't move forward with negotiations until we had a referendum where the majority of Albertans voted in favor of that. So that's one of the reasons why I haven't raised it with the Prime Minister. But we did ask for the actuary to give us an assessment We hired Morneau Chappelle to do our assessment based on what the law said. His analysis, their analysis said that we're entitled to over $300 billion. Trevor Doom did an analysis, and his was more like $150 billion. So that's why we figure it will be at least that amount. The methodology they came up with from the auditor, or from the, I think it was the Auditor General, they came up with an analysis that would have been closer to that. But here's the thing, and maybe Trevor Doom will want to add to this, that we would only need $20 billion to be transferred in order for us to have the same solvency as the Canada Pension Plan. That is because the payments are relatively small when you think about it. It's not the same as a government-funded public pension. Those are much higher payouts. This is a relatively small amount, so the amount that would have to be there to fund it on the pay-as-you-go basis, paying a portion of it, is actually much smaller. But when it comes to why don't we just move ahead and do it anyway, well, then we'd be paying not only for all of Canada's pension, but then also having additional premiums to pay for an additional supplementary pension. And we're trying to end this unfairness that Albertans have. And so that's why I think it has to be put to a vote. Are we in or are we out? And the way the legislation is written is kind of all or nothing, and we just don't have that answer yet.
Real quick, Trevor.
Just a simple point, that if we were to withdraw with literally zero, then I estimate the contribution rate of a separate plan would be about 9.8. And that you should have in mind relative to the 9.9 base contribution rate this evening.
Okay, I'd be remiss, because I've heard these guys argue. Michael, didn't you have a different
Right. I was just going to note that.
Didn't you have a different number than Trevor?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if we can do this succinctly, because Trevor and I have been debating this for well over a year in very long conversation.
I'm giving you the last word here.
Okay, I'm taking it. Okay, so Morneau Chappelle basically said, how much money does Alberta need to get to be put in the position it would have been if it had never been in the plan? So it took all of our contributions and gave us a return on those, and that gives us some number over $300 billion. My problem with that is it assumes returns on money that really wasn't there because it was given out to other provinces. And my approach has been to do a fund accounting approach. My background is accounting, which I think follows the actuarial principles, that we should be given our return on the share of the plan. And Trevor is, I think with good reason for some precedent, says it should be based on the money's all pooled and shared equally. But that results in some provinces getting a return on money that they didn't even put in.
Okay. See why I gave him the last word? Sorry, Trevor. Sometimes I play favorites. We're way over time, but I want to get your comment in. Go ahead.
My question is, with us being so resource dependent for a majority of the jobs in the province, with Ottawa crushing that ability, what's to be able to maintain the CPP if we go without it, if our people start getting laid off because we can't get our resources to tide water? So no pipelines, no jobs, no pension plan for Albertans.
Okay, Premier, I feel like you kind of went there, but go ahead.
It may be surprising. I mean, one of the issues that we have about resource revenues is that it's the provincial government that's over-reliant on it. Our budget has been built around having a very high number of resource revenues. You might be surprised to know that the number of people who were employed full-time in oil and gas is, as of last year, 154,000. The number of people employed in tech is 195,000. So we have now become very, very proficient at developing a high volume of the resource without having the same number of people that we did historically, for better or for worse. But it gives me some confidence that that dream that we had of diversifying the economy, it's here. We have the vast majority of Albertans are employed in something other than the energy sector. That being said, if we had all three of those pipelines that we wanted to have, the Northern Gateway, the Keystone XL, and Energy East, we would have 2.5 million barrels of oil more in development, which would have certainly developed more jobs, but that would have been generating about $55 billion in revenue, of which governments take about 40%. So this is why, when we're frustrated looking at the lost opportunity of the last 10 years, I think a lot of people say, let's not lose the opportunity for the next 10 years. And I think we're getting close to being able to make that argument and win it across the country.
Okay, we took way more time than we were supposed to on that topic, but that was well worth it. So here's the question for everybody. And please, by a show of hands, so we can get a true judgment of who's where on this topic. Should Alberta create a pension plan with the same or better benefits than the Canadian pension plan? That's yes. No, no. Who says no? It's amazing. And to the point that one of the panelists, Andrew, made earlier, there have been rooms that maybe haven't been 99% like tonight, but I will tell you that absolutely every city we've went to has been positive on this issue. So very interesting. With that, here's the next video on the possible provincial police force.
Our next topic is the potential creation of an Alberta police service to take over community policing from the RCMP. Today, roughly 80% of Albertans are served by local municipal police services, such as the Calgary, Edmonton, and Lethbridge City Police Services. However, Albertans living in most rural communities and a few mid-sized cities like Red Deer, Fort McMurray, and Airdrie are policed by the RCMP under Alberta's policing contract with Ottawa. And as is the case with most federal agreements, Alberta is getting shortchanged. To be clear, RCMP police officers and staff aren't the problem. They do all they can to protect us with the resources they have. The problem is Ottawa. Because the federal government is failing to provide the number of promised officers and resources to Alberta communities under the policing contract, response times are slow, staffing is stretched thin, and officers are often moved across the country at a moment's notice, resulting in little connection to the Alberta communities they serve. Furthermore, because of French language requirements, English-speaking Alberta officers do not qualify for senior RCMP positions. And ultimately, the RCMP's policing priorities are chosen by the federal government in Ottawa, rather than the provincial government in Alberta. Even the federal government itself has recently stated the RCMP should transition away from contract policing when current agreements expire in 2032. Ontario and Quebec have had provincial services for over 100 years. Why not Alberta? So, what are the benefits of Alberta withdrawing from the federal policing contract and creating our own provincial police service to provide community policing? 1, more local, more accountable. An Alberta police service would be run by and for Albertans, accountable to our province and not to the federal government in Ottawa. Police officers and support staff could build long-term careers in the Alberta communities they know and love. And any current RCMP officers and support staff working in Alberta would be invited to join a new Alberta police service. 2, safer rural communities. With local recruitment and stable placements, rural response times would improve considerably from where they are now, and coverage would become more reliable and tailored to each municipality and region. This is especially important in underserved rural Alberta communities. 3, flexible, made-in-Alberta solution. Most Albertans already have local police services. The province would assist larger communities like Red Deer, Fort McMurray, and Airdrie to transition to their own police services, while smaller, rural communities would be policed by the new provincial police service. And of course, nothing would change for Edmonton, Calgary, and other communities that already have municipal police services in place. But there are also potential drawbacks to consider. 1, startup costs. Establishing a new police service requires significant initial investment. Hiring officers, buying equipment, building training infrastructure, and training personnel. Ultimately, the startup costs could reach into the hundreds of millions over several years. 2, loss of some federal operational funding. The federal government currently covers 30% of RCMP contract policing costs. It is therefore likely that there will be additional ongoing operational costs for the province. However, municipalities would not be saddled with those costs. So, should Alberta create an Alberta Police Service to take over community policing from the RCMP?
I would like to start with the panelists this time for something a little bit different and get a bit of a history lesson as we do, and ask Justice MacDonald, do you think Alberta could pull something like this off?
Well, it already did.
It's like I knew that.
Yeah. Anyway, what a lot of people don't realize is Alberta did have its own provincial police from 1917 to 1932. Now, that came about because in 1916, the province passed the law regarding prohibition. And the RCMP, which was contracted to be the provincial police force of Alberta, was directed by their superiors in Ottawa not to enforce that act. And so that led to a real dispute between the government in Edmonton, the government in Ottawa, with the result that on very short notice, the RCMP was withdrawn from the province entirely. And this left the government of the day very short notice to establish its own police force, which it did, the Alberta Provincial Police. And they ended up becoming a very professional and highly regarded police force by the people of Alberta. Now, unfortunately, 1932 comes around, depths of the Depression, the province is effectively bankrupt, so the force was closed down, not for any operational issues, because it was working well, but there just was there was no longer any money. And then the RCMP came back. But during its existence, it was a very good, professionally run, made in Alberta Police Service.
Right. Thank you, Justice McDonald. Can I remind you, when you come to a microphone, just tell us your name and where you're from, and then get into your comments. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Chris. I was from Airdrie, but now I live in Eckville. I'm not really in favor of a provincial police service, but more of a regional service. So, for example, when I lived in Airdrie, I had some issues where I needed to rely on the RCMP, but because the perpetrator was in Calgary, there were a lot of interoperability issues, and I didn't get the satisfaction I needed. And talking with Lacombe County councillor, I expressed my views that rather than using the sheriffs, Lacombe Police should be a regional service for the county, and that's maybe the model we need to look at. And the reason I feel that way is if I have an issue with the police conduct, I don't need to be going all the way to Edmonton to try to express my views. I want to be able to knock on my councillor's door and say, hey, why is this county Mountie sitting at the old folks home in Eckville for hours on end instead of out there actually patrolling?
Yep, it's a great comment. Premier, I know you can comment on any of this. Did you want to on this one?
Just agree. I mean, that is the model that some municipalities are looking at. Every place you have a municipal police service, there's the potential for them to regionalize depending on what their neighbors would prefer. The sheriffs are being established as well as an accredited police agency, and we already have 2 municipalities who've asked to set up detachments, but we want to make sure that each municipality has the chance to choose the type of policing that is best for them.
This microphone.
Brian Way from Airdrie. I have a concern that this was to establish another group of provincial employees when our province isn't providing existing employees and services, for instance, in healthcare and for education. So I wonder what would make this different, or would this come to the same point where we would have arguing about salaries and where the province would decide not to provide the materials that are needed for a good police force.
Thanks, Brian. I can guarantee there'd be arguing about salaries, no matter who was in charge of it. Anyway, let's go to this mic.
Hi, my name's Al Clader. I'm from Airdrie. I am in full support of the, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this process. I'm in full support of provincial police and believe it's past due. I was a member of both Calgary, Edmonton and Calgary service earlier in my life. There was talk back then. Premier Klein was interested in getting it up. There was a change to uniforms from Calgary's blue shirts and Edmonton's gray shirt. I believe all the municipal police forces are now uniformed in the same way. My question, most of my questions are about the facilities that are already in the province. So does Alberta have any ownership of any of the detachment offices?
Yeah.
K Division?
Yep.
Lab in Edmonton?
You bet, Al. Let's address it. I think you're wondering about the financial cost and impact if we do this, yes. Right? Yep. Thanks for the question, and thanks for your service, Premier.
Yeah. The short answer is yes, because the RCMP are currently our contracted provincial police service. When we buy their equipment, when we build the detachments, those buildings and that equipment is owned by the province of Alberta. And when it comes to just looking at bench strength, we pay the RCMP for 1,910 officers. they only have about 1,400 that are on staff at any given time because of vacancies and holes and RCMP officers getting pulled into other jurisdictions for federal priorities. We have done an assessment of our current sheriff complement, and we believe about 1,200 of them will be able to be part of this new police service immediately. Half of them as police, half as peace officers with a pathway to becoming police. So we're almost at about equivalent right now with where we are, and we have been the ones who had to add the police forces. Just to go back to the earlier point, we've added the border control team, we added the scan team to shut down drug houses. We have added the fugitive apprehension team. Those really all should have been things that the federal government did and the RCMP did, but they didn't, and so we've managed to fill that gap.
Thank you, Premier. I make this point at every town hall we do, and it's worth making every time. I know there are RCMP and Airdrie. When we have this discussion, it's not about the men and women who are serving us and laying their lives on the line, and we're all grateful for that. It's about the management of the bureaucracy and whether we might do better, and I think we all understand that. Stephen Buffalo, what happens on First Nations? I would gather a variety there as well.
Thanks, Bruce, and just wanted to share, like currently right now, the Blood Tribe, the biggest reserve in Canada, has its own police force, and as well the Tsuut'ina Nation, which is just beside Calgary, they have their own force, and I know Siksika Nation is working on doing something as well, and they have wheels on the ground, so to speak. And you know what, and this is about safety for the communities, and right now, if you go north Edmonton, a lot of the communities are kind of remote and response times might be difficult. So obviously proof is there that it can work, and it's just the ability of working with all of the parties involved to make sure that something works for everybody.
Thank you, Stephen. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question before you get to the vote. I know that you like to take votes at these meetings to gauge the public support for these issues, and you get excited when everyone votes yes. But do you honestly feel like the people in this room represent Albertans? Look around. This crowd does not look very diverse to me, and I would guess there are very few people out here that are under the age of 30.
I'd agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong. Let's go over here. Go ahead.
Premier, you brought up yourself that there are vacancies in the current RCMP. As I understand it, the RCMP is having trouble with recruitment, and I worry that we're going to be spending money on a police force and still not ending up with bodies because the RCMP has a recruitment problem, but we as citizens still expect a high level of trust in the officers that you hire. So how do you expect to resolve that vacancy problem?
I can tell you just the experience they had in Grand Prairie when they did the assessment, because we were offering grants to cities to determine if they wanted a new policing model. And they found that they'd be able to save money if they moved to a municipal police force. They decided not to do that and hire more officers instead. So instead of having 55 RCMP officers, when they go to their full complement next year, it'll be 90, and they have a plan to grow to 110. And in addition to that, when they did a call for resumes, they had 200 people apply for the job. And so part of it is that the way in which the RCMP recruits, they're a bit of a paramilitary style organization. I think that's sort of the technical term for them, but they deploy almost in a military style where they're here for a few years and then they get moved around. That is maybe one of the reasons why when people want to police in their own community, they may not be as interested in applying for the RCMP as they might be interested in applying for a local or regional force. At least that was the experience in Grand Prairie.
It's probably another valid point to raise tonight. Minister Schultz.
I was just going to say the one thing that hasn't come up tonight, Premier, and maybe you want to touch on that, is also the white paper that came out of the federal government. Because when people say, you know, why are we looking at this now? I think we got close to it with the infrastructure question, is really around what the federal government also plans to do in terms of their approach to contract policing, and the white paper that came out in the, luckily it was the dying days of the Trudeau leadership. But maybe you want to talk about that a little bit, Premier?
Yeah, well, they had been giving us an indication for several years that they wanted to reorient the RCMP more around like a federal police force similar to the FBI. So there's still lots of policing that needs to be done on cross-border issues, organized crime, fentanyl labs, drug trafficking, human trafficking, all of that. And so when Justin Trudeau was about to leave, the last paper he issued was why it is the government believes that the RCMP should move out of contract policing. So do we want to be in the same position that we were back in 1916, was it? 1917, when the RCMP pulled the plug on us and we had to scramble to put together an alternative police force, or knowing that that's the direction that the RCMP and the federal government may wish to go, should we be planning for that now? That's what we've been planning for the last few years.
Right on.
Bruce, if I could just suggest, could you maybe ask Dr. Kin his experience dealing with some of his patients and their desire to become part of a provincial police force?
Sure, I can do that. Hey, Dr. Aiken, do you want to weigh in on this topic?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My name is Dr. Aiken. I'm a family doc based out of Didsbury. And, I'm proud to call myself, I live in Airdrie. And one of the major challenges we have in like we mentioned, recruitment, is we have a lot of ex-military people here in our Airdrie in Didsbury that want to be part of the police force. I have at least 5 of my patients that said, actually, you know what? If we start an Alberta provincial police force, there will be more. So I don't think there will be, we have a lot of people locally here that want to be part of our, and it will be an excellent police force here in Alberta. So I am completely in support of our Alberta Provincial Police Force, and I believe we do have the numbers, we have the talent here, locally here, to be able to staff this Provincial Police Force. Thank you.
Thank you. I tell you what, this panel keeps you on your toes up here, and that was well worth it, Dr. Aiken. Tara, can I ask you, a local, newest MLA, you hit a lot of doors. What did you hear when you were knocking on doors about this subject?
Thanks, everyone, for being here. Yeah, well, obviously, I am a rural riding, Old Didsbury, 3 Hills, and as someone who farms, before I even hit the doors, I could have told you what the sentiment would have been in some of the towns, but I did speak at a door with a retired RCMP officer, proud member who had served, and he expressed his concerns of the lack of resources that are there for them now, and to the point that he discouraged his son from becoming an officer, and he felt quite strongly to have a provincial peace force. I hit another door, and it's a serving member of Calgary Police Force, and he loved the idea of if he could be serving in the community where he's raising his family versus being in Calgary. For anyone who is from a rural area, you understand the importance of community. So that's a piece on the door. The other piece, I think, that is unique when we talk about a rural area, it can be more, I lost my word, but...
Forgetful?
Yeah, apparently. I'm all alone. What's the word for when no one's around you? Thank you. I knew you could help me a little. There's a piece with that. And everyone says, well, what can you do about that? When you're in a rural community, there's only so much you can do. You can invest in the cameras if you have the funds to do a gate. That can be slightly preventative, but it doesn't stop it. What we have seen is that they've realized we're easy pickings. And very, very well-planned groups now come out and are targeting. So for communities, it is a really big problem rurally. And not having someone, or even having the complement, I can tell you, I'll be a little faster. I did just meet with one of my town councils, and they expressed the concern that, with what they're paying, and they don't have the complement that they're supposed to have in their detachment. I mean, it is a resource issue as well, right? And that's a problem when we're paying into something that we're not getting all the bodies.
Yeah. Thank you, Tara. That was well worth it. Thank you. That's super context. What a great panel. You'll hear from more tonight. I promise everybody will speak. Here's the poll question. I'll try not to get too excited. Should Alberta create an Alberta Police Service to take over community policing from the RCMP? Who says yay? Absolutely. Who opposes? Thank you very much. The next panel, or the next discussion, is on proposed constitutional changes. Here's the video.
Our next topic is Alberta taking a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution to empower and better protect provincial rights. The Canadian Constitution including its Charter of Rights of Freedoms and sections on the division of powers between the federal and provincial governments, is foundational to our democracy. The enforcement of the Constitution by governments and the courts ensures our rights and freedoms are protected, and that our provincial and federal governments generally function as they should. But no document is perfect. Some things that made sense 150 years ago may no longer make sense today. That is why the Constitution contains an amending formula that permits the Constitution to be altered should enough provinces and the federal government agree to it. Over the last decades, several outdated and unfair problems with the Constitution have been identified, but no tangible progress has been made to fix them, due primarily to a lack of federal and provincial leadership. Examples of proposed constitutional reforms include the following. 1. Amending the division of powers to indicate that core areas of provincial jurisdiction, including over natural resources and health, are immune from federal legislation, and to also ensure that in shared areas of jurisdiction, such as agriculture and immigration, provincial laws prevail over federal ones. 2. Imposing constitutional limits on the federal spending power in areas of provincial jurisdiction, including a provincial right to opt out of federal spending measures with proper compensation should they so choose. 3. Adhering strictly to representation by population in the House of Commons. Right now, those living in smaller provinces are greatly overrepresented when compared to those living in larger ones. 4. Either abolishing the Senate entirely or having it actually represent provincial interests as originally intended by mandating an elected Senate with the same amount of senators representing each province. 5. Allowing provinces to appoint their own King's Bench and Court of Appeal justices, rather than having those appointments made by the federal government. 6. Expanding the Supreme Court to allow for more justices from Western Canada and making prior service on a province's Court of Appeal a mandatory requirement of becoming a Supreme Court justice. 7. Eliminating the Ottawa residency requirement for judges on federal courts to ensure more Western Canadian representation. And 8. Mandating provincial approval of the appointment of a lieutenant governor to a province by the federal government. There are, of course, many other potential constitutional amendments that are worth discussion, but this is a start. So, should Alberta take a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution in order to empower and better protect provincial rights? And if so, which of the amendments discussed or other proposals should the Alberta government advocate for?
Okay, on proposed constitutional changes, and forgive me, it's tough with the light here, but if there's someone at this mic, let's start here this time.
Hello, I'm Bill McDonald from Calgary. I have a couple of businesses in Rocky View County, and I thought our provincial rights were protected already under Section 92 of the Constitution, and I feel that the courts, the Supreme Court, by adjudicating in favor of CO2, atmospheric CO2, they basically shut down our ability to develop the resources. And I'm just kind of concerned or confused as to how the court appointments have led to this.
Well, that sounds like one for our legal expert. I don't know, Bruce, I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you take that one? You put me on the spot.
The gentleman made reference to the CO2 reference, and you're right, the Supreme Court ruled against Alberta on that one. But on the Impact Assessment Act, they ruled in favor of Alberta's challenge to the legislation as being a grotesque overreach into provincial responsibility. And so they gave, the Supreme Court gave its opinion that the law was unconstitutional. Unfortunately, the federal government chose to ignore that opinion because it was simply an opinion. And so we have the situation where the federal government is ignoring what the Supreme Court of Canada said about that piece of legislation. So we're into a whole bigger mess than you might think. But that's where we're at. The federal government doesn't even follow what the Supreme Court of Canada says when it doesn't want to follow it.
I think it'd be interesting to ask the CEO of a large oil and gas company how this impacts business and what your thoughts might be. Grant, can I ask you to comment on this subject and in general what the impact is on your industry?
Absolutely. Excuse me. I do think, first of all, I think that everyone here, we can say from a panelist perspective that we're very blessed to have our Premier that battles for us every single day. And I'm not saying that because I'm sitting beside her. I'm saying that because I truly believe that. Resource development is of paramount importance to, we think, the economic engine of Canada. So to develop our resources within our province, but to be able to monetize them outside of our province. And that's where I think there's this federal overreach that we do have. And our objective here is to develop our resources. We're very resource rich. If you think about the resources we have right within this province, they're not situated in Eastern Canada, Ontario, or Quebec. They're situated here. So to develop our resources, be able to monetize them at the highest level possible into world markets, this is where there's much overreach by our federal government at this particular time. So from a constitutional perspective, we're trying to make amendments to that. And I say, thank goodness we've got our Premier that is fighting the fight on our behalf. Because you think about the healthcare, the education that we could have within this province, the social programs, if we're able to develop our resources. And this goes back into many more things ultimately as well. So what we're looking at is control our resources, monetize them at the highest level possible, and be able to, and it goes back into the equalization comments as well. But we do have some challenges with the Constitution as it is today. And we talk about the overreach on the Impact Assessment Act, Bill C-69, Bill C-48. There's many things that we're trying to alter, but we have our champion to battle.
Well, Grant, you've actually got a couple up there. I'm not going to call on Minister Schultz right now, but I promise she would echo those sentiments and talk about all those bills. We'll save that for later. Let's get to some microphones. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Bernadette Maxwell. I'm from Calgary. I support all of these ideas with the Constitution, and here's why. When Alberta entered Confederation in 1905, it was a sparsely populated frontier land with 70,000 of Canada's 5 million, roughly 1% of the population. Alberta lacked the resources to govern itself and gladly accepted some help from Ottawa. The governance established then was for Alberta as a small, dependent colony, not a thriving province with 5 million people, 12% of the population, and 15% of GDP. Our governance structure is egregiously outdated and archaic. It no longer reflects Alberta's capacity, ambitions, or contribution, and limits our prosperity. We most definitely need changes, and if the rest of the country won't renegotiate fairly, which is highly likely, then we may just need to go our own way.
Thanks, Bernadette. Let's try here.
Well, that stole a bit of my thunder, but I want to add to that. The Constitution of this country is the root cause, I believe, of almost everything we're talking about here today. The Constitution was drawn up to give power to Upper and Lower Canada and for them to be able to take advantage of all the outlying territories all the way from then Nova Scotia out to BC, when they were basically resource areas for the Central Canada to rape. And they're doing that today, and everything we're talking about is indicating that, and that's what we're fighting about. And in addition to what was just said, every institution in this country is loaded with people from Central Canada who are making every decision and spending all the money and controlling all the outlying areas. It's not just Alberta. I'm from Nova Scotia. It's the same problem there.
Yep.
So this is the fundamental issue that's going on today, and if it's not fixed, we won't have to have a referendum. There'll be no Canada because it can't survive like this.
Thank you. I think that might have been, is that James from Chestermere, right? You know, the voice, tough to see, but I knew. I want to save Michael on this one. Premier, do you want to jump in now or wait a sec?
Well, I think I can understand why James had that analysis, because when you look at just the Senate seats, they make no sense. Why would why would Nova Scotia have 10 Senate seats and New Brunswick have 10 Senate seats when they both only have about 1 million population, and Alberta have 6 Senate seats? And so that is one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation. It's almost like, as he described, they built a country with those Central Canadian and Eastern Canadian early players in mind, and then they've been trying to fit everybody else in, but we've been having to fight for every aspect of being treated with equality. And so I think Michael has a pretty good history lesson to give us on how that went and how it could go. But I will say, I mean, part of the reason why one of the issues that we're talking about is to have some limits on federal spending is that we do have this imbalance in our Constitution, where if we pass laws in federal areas of jurisdiction, they can use their law of disallowance. And they've used it 112 times. When we tried to create our own currency under the social credit, that was one of the times they used their law and their power of disallowance, saying you can't pass laws in our area of jurisdiction. But it doesn't go the other way. They pass laws in our areas of jurisdiction all the time. And so if we put a provision in there saying you can't do that without the provincial consent, we think that would give that same kind of balance and parity. And we came very close to getting all of the provinces on board with that amending formula of 7 out of 10 provinces representing 50% of the population. But I think it might be one of the major changes we need to make.
Hey, before we go to Michael, Premier, quick follow-up. And Albertans seem to be miffed at who's being appointed to the Senate as well. It's not exactly a reflection of who's here tonight. You don't have to say yes.
I guess the question is, does anyone know who our 6 senators are? Would you be able to name them? And isn't that a problem? I think that's a problem. If they're supposed to be representing regional interests and be listening to what Albertans have to say and then taking that to the upper chamber, which is how it was originally envisioned, then we should all have a lot more interest in who's been appointed. And they probably shouldn't be appointed at all. They should be elected.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, well, I just went through peer review on a paper on constitutional history and how it relates to provincial autonomy. It's my 3rd peer-reviewed paper, and I hate the process, but it did make the paper better. So my main point is that Canada, and maybe uniquely in the world, became independent of Great Britain through a process called responsible self-government. And this was elucidated in Lord Durham's report in 1839, that and it's a constitutional convention of the Canadian Constitution, which is to say that if you demonstrate the ability to govern yourselves responsibly, then power should devolve closer to the people being governed. And that's exactly how Canada, from 1867 with the B&A Act, and 1870 with Rupert's Land Sale, and 1905 with the provinces, and 1930 with the Resource Transfer Act, and 1931 with the Statute of Westminster, 82 Constitution Act, and as recently as the Clarity Reference of 2018, which confirmed that a province, Quebec, could secede following the exact same principle of responsible government, which was quoted in that Clarity Act. So the paper really is saying that if for us in Alberta or any other like-minded province, we can follow the exact same process, but we have to demonstrate responsible self-government, just like Canada had to demonstrate it before it was independent of Great Britain. And so a lot of the things that we're talking about today are things that Quebec has done. They, for 2 generations, have invested in self-government, which they then, I think, effectively use to assert their political will in Canada. They police themselves, they manage their own money, they collect their own taxes, they co-manage immigration, and they actually, when they say that we might want to consider seceding, have demonstrated they actually could. And I think that's given them some influence in Canadian politics that Alberta has lacked, because we've not made the same investment in that process of responsible self-government.
Thank you, Michael. I shouldn't tell tales from the road, but I was sitting on the bus, and Michael Binion and Trevor Toom were in the seat in front of me. Man, was that an interesting conversation for an hour or so that I was eavesdropping on. One more at each mic that we haven't heard from, so we'll start here.
Hi there. I'd just like to thank everyone on the panel here for being here today, as well as everyone in the room. It's really great for everyone to be here. I actually have some very difficult subject matter in regards to the radicalization of our youth. After COVID, I ended up going back to university, and I ended up doing a pretty deep dive on the concept of gender and gender identity.
Does this have to do with constitutional change?
Yes, I'm gonna skip back.
Okay.
And so I believe after seeing this and seeing what I've learned, I believe there's strong evidence that shows that a person's gender identity is actually directly tied to their religious beliefs and their religious belief systems. And so I'm actually asking you here today to please ask that we remove gender identity as a protected class, because I believe that Canadians' ability to express their gender is already allowed under the freedom of religion and expression. And since our charter does show, or the very first line in the charter is that Canada is a nation that recognizes the supremacy of God, I believe that the Canadian government and as well the Alberta government should take a gender binary approach. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. One more. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Teresa Klein from Calgary, and I just want to thank Danielle for her leadership. I think she's done a great job. However, I think changing the Constitution is, if anyone can do it, you can, but I don't think you can. And I think the only thing we can do is scrap it and be independent and start a republic, start a whole new system, and then maybe invite the rest of Canada to join us.
I love it when they say you've done a great job, but. Premier, go ahead. Take the last word on this one, then we got to move on.
Well, I understand why. We put it on there because we wanted to see if there was an appetite to look at constitutional change, and it's the mood is different in different rooms. I think that people want the outcomes that we're talking about here, but we've seen how difficult it can be through Meech Lake Accord, the Charlottetown Accord, and nobody's really tried to change the Constitution in a meaningful way that goes across jurisdictions since about 1993. That being said, Nunavut got created in the meantime, and that would have been a constitutional change. They just had devolution of the resource responsibility. That also was a constitutional change. Quebec managed to convince the House of Commons and Senate to declare them as distinct society, which were sort of foundational principles from those first two documents. That's a constitutional change. And so we have seen that there has been some kind of changes that are either done bilaterally. I don't think we've ever tried the multilateral approach in the last 30 years, but it doesn't mean that it's not worth giving it a try. I don't know if anyone else has any greater positivity that we might be able to be more successful this time, but it's been a long time since we tried. And so the question is it worth a try now again?
Excellent. That's a great way to leave this one. And if you didn't get your question to this one, again, we'll open it up at the end and you can come back. So here's the question for all of you tonight by a show of hands. Should Alberta take a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution to empower and better protect provincial rights? Who says yay? And anyone opposed? Excellent. Okay, the next video, we'll discuss the need for immigration reform.
Our next topic is Alberta taking more control of the immigration system to counter Ottawa's open border policies, which are driving up the cost of living and are not aligned with the needs of Alberta's economy. In just over 100 years, Alberta's population has grown from a few 100,000 farmers, ranchers, and First Nations peoples to a province of over 5 million, with one of the most prosperous economies in the world. This great success story would not have been possible without new Albertans moving here from all over the world. That is why Alberta has always welcomed newcomers looking to contribute to our province's economic success and unique culture. And we always will. However, as all Canadians intuitively understand, the number of newcomers entering the country each year needs to be sustainable, and everyone wanting to come should be committed to upholding the Canadian values of hard work, love of freedom, and peaceful coexistence. Sadly, Justin Trudeau's Liberals upended Canada's immigration system for over a decade by instituting an open borders policy that permitted millions to enter Canada each year, often without any sort of proper vetting, job prospects, or needed employment skills. The results have been disastrous. Housing prices have skyrocketed. Unemployment keeps increasing as immigration outpaces job growth. And sadly, many of the divisions and disputes that plague other countries have begun making their way into ours. Further, Ottawa has ignored the request of Alberta to cut refugee claimants and student visas, and instead permit Alberta, like Quebec, to select a more sustainable and targeted number of economic migrants better able to contribute to our province's economy. What can Alberta do about the situation? Quite a bit, actually. You see, under the Constitution, immigration is a shared area of responsibility between the federal and provincial governments, which makes sense. Essentially, the federal government gets to decide who they let into Canada, but it's up to the provinces to provide the vast majority of the social programs that newcomers need. So obviously, we should have a say about who is coming here. If Alberta isn't satisfied with the number or economic qualifications of newcomers moving to our province, we may have the option to withhold provincial social programs to any non-citizen or non-permanent resident who does not have an Alberta-approved immigration status. This would likely encourage more sustainable numbers of immigration overall, while supporting the entry of newcomers that can contribute to our provincial economy. If Alberta went this direction, Ottawa could decide to fight Alberta on this issue in the courts, and there would be some additional costs in taking a more hands-on approach to immigration. However, much, if not all of that cost, could be offset in corresponding savings to our social programs. So, should Alberta take more control of the immigration system in this way, or continue with the status quo? And how can our province convince Ottawa to act more responsibly with their immigration policies in the future?
This is another one that can be emotional depending on how one feels about it. We've got a couple of first-generation, in fact, 3 first-generation Albertans, Canadians on the panel with us, and maybe I'll ask Samita to kick us off tonight, who is also the chair of the Premier's Council on Multiculturalism.
Thank you, Bruce. First of all, I have to say thank you to this audience. You're amazing, because we haven't laughed as much in any other place that how much we've laughed in Airdrie. So thank you for being who you are. Well, and on another personal note, I think most of Alberta knows that I'm a first-generation immigrant, thanks to Bruce again. So that was the other one I wanted to share. On a serious side, my story is no different than any other immigrant family that came in here with hopes, but a little uncertainty is what is going to be ahead of us. But with a lot of, the hesitation, which province would be the first one to settle in, Alberta is where we found home. Young family with 2 kids, affordable housing, stable jobs, and here we are, quite well settled in this province. The other families who are moving in either interprovincially or internationally come with the same hopes, saying what we got, our children and grandchildren and new immigrant families come in with the same hope, saying, hey, affordable housing, Ontario, BC, are really not the place where they can afford or get a stable job. And guess what? It's not the same it was 30 years back. And so the question is, and by the way, this is not about taunting at any immigrant or trying to say that we were better off and you're not and you're different. No, no. Immigration is the fabric of Alberta. And let's face it, we all contribute equally. But the question is, if Alberta also becomes unaffordable, where do we go from here? Where do our children and grandchildren find a stable job? What are they going to do to be able to structure their lives? So really, we need to ask this question. We need to put certain check stops in place, and we need to realize that they need the same opportunity, the same resources that we had, and hence we all need to think outside the box to really realize that is this the right way, how immigration is growing? Is this the right way to approach it? And if not, be ready to hear from you.
Thank you, Smita. I think you'll be amazed, and the Premier will add some context to this in a minute, and so will some others up here about the numbers and how they have changed over the past 10 years. But let's go to the microphone. And remember to introduce yourself. John, if you could introduce yourself to everybody and tell us where you're from.
Bruce. My name is John. For those that don't know, my name is John. I'm from Calgary. I show up in other cities as well on occasion. Premier, first of all, thank you very much for putting together this panel, and to all the members of the panel, thank you for volunteering your time, because this is unpaid, and you guys have taken a lot of abuse over this, but thank you for doing what you're doing, because it's going to make a difference. Before I proceed, I want to ask the audience here tonight, if I was selling you donuts at $15 for a dozen, and I only gave you 8 donuts every time, how many of you would actually complain? Would you settle for that 8 donuts for 15 bucks when you're buying a dozen? Hell no. Okay? This is the problem, and this is what this panel is doing. They're educating us so we're aware of how bad of a deal we have within Canada. We have an abusive relationship, and you guys are going to help us fix it. So let's talk about immigration. Immigration should improve and enhance our society, and people need to contribute. There's a lot of refugees that don't work and use our social services. In the UK, you can't access social services for 5 years. Is that a possibility for Alberta?
Yep.
And then lastly, when students in Alberta go to school in Saskatchewan or BC, they pay the sales tax. When they come in as foreigners from other provinces, they don't. They get the Alberta advantage. Lastly,
John, you're going on 3 minutes here.
Oh my God. Okay, one more thing, Bruce, if I can. Student unemployment is affected by foreign workers.
Yes.
20% our students aren't working, our youth aren't working. Foreign workers send the majority of their take-home money home, and it doesn't go into our economy.
Gotcha.
We need a win-win.
Gotcha. Premier, do you want to address John's comments?
Yeah. I'll just try to put it into context, because it's almost like the CPP conversation we had earlier, that just because it once worked well doesn't mean it's working well today. So when you look at the numbers between 2009 and 2019, and keep in mind there were different leaders and different political parties in place during that time, the typical number of newcomers, international newcomers, that came into Canada was less than 300,000 a year. It was 0.6%. Last year, it was 1.8 million. So that gives you an idea of if you're feeling the pressure and you're seeing housing prices go up, rent go up, inability of your son or your grandchild to get an entry-level job, if you're seeing pressures, inflation, all of these things, there's just a matter of, can we keep up with the number of people who are arriving here? And so this is one of the things that we're talking about, is what can we do? One of the things that I think we should do is we should look at Section 95 of the Constitution, which suggests that provinces should take the lead on immigration and that the feds should only take decisions from time to time. If we did that, we would develop our labor market assessment, we would issue work permits, we would determine who got permanent resident status, and the federal government would determine citizenship. And I think that would allow for us to match the number of people coming into Alberta with the needs of the economy. I think we can probably manage about 1% of the population, so 50,000. Instead, it's been about 150,000 a year for the last 3 years, and I think we're all feeling the pressure from that. So that would be one thing. But the other thing that we are also consulting on is, what does it mean if somebody then doesn't come in with an Alberta work permit or with Alberta status? Then should we be paying for the social programs to be able to support them? That's what we're trying to get some feedback on. I think so. Yeah. So I think this is one of the issues that they're facing in Eastern Canada, is that the federal government will pay to support people for a certain period of time, and then when they back out, they leave it to the provinces to have to provide that level of support. And that's part of the reason why you're seeing every single premier say, wait a minute, we've got to address the foundation here, that maybe there's just too many people coming in for us to be able to absorb.
I'll just try and give you some context, too, that we're hearing from some of the other cities that we visited. The number is 1.8 million. Some people have pointed out that's the number that we know or we're told. Is it more? Who knows? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Shauna. I'm from Airdrie. I'm a teacher, and I'm an anomaly because I'm conservative as well. And Dr. Trevor, I think it's not an easy position to be in, I'll tell you that. I guess part of it is, I mean, my kids will probably never be able to afford a house here. That's probably a given. The other thing is, as a teacher, we're dealing with a lot of people coming in who don't speak English, and we're at class sizes of 38 to 40 in our high school, and we are getting 3-4 kids in a class that do not have English, and we have to teach them because that's our job. And as teachers, I've seen really good teachers leaving the profession because they're like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
How do I have 38 kids with 14 on IPPs, 3 that don't speak English,
Yes.
major behaviors, and it's really challenging. So that's just one of the things was the English is to just go, here you go, teach them.
Yep.
And the other thing is the jobs for our kids. I work with kids trying to get them work experience credits. They can't find jobs to be able to do that, even part-time. And that's a real challenge for our kids. It's really heartbreaking because they're begging, please help me. And there's just no jobs.
Oh, wonderful. Listen, I can't cut, Premier, I'm coming in a second. I can't cut a teacher off. I just want you to know there are more of you than you realize. There are way more than you realize. The discussion is with the ATA, not so much teachers. But anyway, Premier, she had a lot there. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that as well. That was one of the reasons why we had to announce an $8.6 billion plan to add 200,000 new spaces, because that's one of the issues that we're facing is we just need more physical space for people. And we understand the need to hire more teachers to bring class sizes down, but also more education assistants so that you have the hands on deck to be able to help with those special needs kids. So thank you for all the work that you do. We appreciate it.
100%. Thank you. Go ahead.
Very good evening, Honorable Premier Smith, and to the esteemed guest. Firstly, Honorable Premier Smith, thank you so much for the hard work you're doing to put Alberta first. Myself, I am Rahul Bhatia. I am founder and CEO of ProLink Events. I moved to Alberta in March 2023 as an immigrant. This province has offered me a lot of opportunities, energy, and community. No doubt, immigration plays a very vital role in building up Alberta's and Canada economy. But right now, we are feeling the pressure with the rising challenges in healthcare, housing, school, and jobs. It feels like the system is stretched too thin. A lot mainly due to the decisions at the federal level. Quebec has more control over its own immigration. So my question is, what do you think Alberta should have same kind of approach or authority to manage the immigration and to have full control on the provincial applications? Thank you.
You can just say yes.
Yes, I think Quebec's approach, where they choose about 55% of their nominees for permanent resident status, that they do that because they prioritize language. We should be aiming for the same thing. We should have about 55% prioritized for the work experience that they have and the needs of our economy. That's how it used to be in the past, so that when somebody arrives here, they're a taxpayer first, and then they may, if they want to stay, reunify family, and then if they want to go back home, then they'd be able to go back home. But we have to get more control over that process for sure.
Hey, this is a perfect time. Dr. Benny, was it was immigration like it is today when you came to Canada, when you came here?
Thanks, Bruce. Absolutely not. So I come from a traditional Chinese medicine family. 33 years ago, we came to Canada. So back then, we got lots of programs helping newcomers to settle in, and the newcomers can contribute back. But today is clear picture. We got lots of programs. Doesn't matter in the education system or by the societies. We got lots of programs helping newcomers. However, newcomers still having a hard time to find jobs or find job fits their skills. And we got employers cannot find proper employees. So we still have worker shortages. So there's clear disconnect between what we need and who's coming. So I do think we need a smarter system so everybody can win.
Hey, I'm Kathy. I've been in Airdrie for 30 years. For immigration, Airdrie has boomed and kids don't have a place to work. But my biggest concern is that people are coming into our country that are qualified in their home countries and are told that they will have jobs here and cannot get employed. And I'm wondering how we can fix that.
Yeah, I think the last person asked that a bit as well, Premier. So,
I'll try to be quick on it. One of the things we found was a problem is that we don't allow people to work in their area of training right away. We make them get 3 years of Canadian work experience, and so it creates a chicken and egg problem. You can't get hired until you've worked for 3 years, but you can't get your first job because of that requirement. So Ontario got rid of that requirement. What it allows for people to do is get trained on right away and have a supervisor, and then if there's any issues that they need to get additional training for, they can do that while they're working. So we're taking a bit of a page from what they're doing in Ontario, and that's one of the things we'll be debating in the fall.
Love to get through the last if we can. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kathy from Calgary. I did a little investigating into immigration numbers, and I'm just wondering if any of you know any of this is actually true, because it would give us another reason why our services are stretched so much. From January to June in 2025, we had 303,000 international mobility program workers. We had 150,000 study permits and 104,000 temporary foreign workers. So when I look at these numbers, and there's a group of us doing that, I'm a keyboard warrior for the Conservative Party, by the way.
There's a few of you in here tonight.
Yeah. So the International Mobility Program, does Alberta have a handle on that?
So, Premier, I don't even know if you can address it, but what everybody seems to wonder at these panels is, here are the numbers that we see. What are the actual numbers? Do they reflect what we see?
You know, I have heard different numbers than that. But again, yours might be cumulative. It may be that when the permit is up, people are supposed to go and they're not leaving. And so that may explain why those numbers are so high. We do know that temporary foreign worker permits, they're trying to get a handle on that, allowing them to only be 1 year and then people have to leave. We're asking them to change the program to not allow people in the low income stream, because those are the ones where people are coming in, and it's I think, one of the reasons why our young people can't get their first jobs. The shame is that it seems like they increased all of the programs except for the ones we need increased, which is the entrepreneurial class, which invest in new businesses, and the work permits for those who are here for jobs. So I'll take, maybe I can get some of your research so I can see if I can verify those numbers. But the numbers I have seen have been pretty alarming for the last couple of years and way out of whack with where we were prior to COVID.
It's almost like someone had an ulterior motive. Here's the question. Should Alberta take more control of the immigration system to counter Ottawa's open border policies? Who says yes? And who says no? And the last video we'll watch tonight is on provincial tax collection.
Our next topic is the option of Alberta collecting all provincial personal income taxes, rather than having Ottawa do it for us. Today, when Albertans file and pay their personal income taxes, they do so through the Canada Revenue Agency, which then remits the provincial portion of those personal income taxes back to the provincial government. However, Alberta businesses file and pay their provincial corporate taxes directly to the provincial government. Quebec does it differently. They collect both personal and corporate income taxes directly from Quebecers, bypassing the CRA altogether. What if Alberta did the same? There would definitely be startup and ongoing administration costs, but it would also mean bringing good-paying jobs to Alberta instead of funding federal employees in other parts of the country. Under Canada's Constitution, levying and collecting taxes is an area of provincial jurisdiction, and Alberta could transition over the coming years to collecting our personal income taxes, as we do with corporate taxes now. So what are some of the benefits to Alberta collecting its own personal income taxes? 1, better provincial tax policy. Currently, Alberta sets its own tax rates and credits, but definitions and treatments of income are still largely tied to federal rules, which limits our flexibility to implement more effective and competitive tax policy. We saw this recently when the federal government changed the rules on capital gains for doctors and other professionals, and Alberta was effectively forced to follow those same rules as it related to provincial personal income taxes. If Alberta were to collect its own taxes, we could tailor our entire tax framework to better reflect our economic realities and provincial policy goals, while declining federal changes to certain portions of tax policies that detrimentally affect provincial income tax policy. This could open the door to streamlining calculations and simplifying provincial income taxes for Alberta residents. 2. Jobs and economic opportunity at home. Collecting our own taxes would also mean establishing the infrastructure and staffing to support it, creating thousands of good, high-paying jobs right here in Alberta, instead of funding positions in Ottawa or other provinces. 3. More Alberta, less Ottawa. By moving away from the federal administration of the CRA and collecting provincial income taxes by ourselves, Alberta can exercise more direct control over a core aspect of self-government, thereby increasing our provincial independence from Ottawa. But there are also potential drawbacks to consider. 1. A long-term commitment. Establishing Alberta's own personal income tax collection agency would not happen overnight. Estimates suggest it could take up to 5 years to fully build out the necessary systems and staffing. This would be a major logistical undertaking that would require a sustained commitment from Albertans and their government. 2. Significant financial investment. The estimated cost to implement Alberta's own tax agency ranges from $750 million to $1.5 billion over several years. Once operational, the system could cost up to $750 million annually and require hiring as many as 5,000 new public employees. These are substantial expenses that must be weighed against the benefits. 3. Potential for added complexity. There are also practical implications for taxpayers and businesses. Albertans would need to file separate federal and provincial tax forms, although online filing would likely ease that burden. There may also be increased complexities for businesses and Albertans working in different provinces throughout the year. Now, tell us what you think about the idea of Alberta collecting its own personal income taxes.
I want to start with the President of the Business Council of Alberta for his take on this issue, because I'm sure, Adam, you must hear from your members on it. And, you know, what do you generally hear from some of these big CEOs?
Thanks, Bruce, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and for being here tonight. You know, this is an example of a proposal that has some inherent advantages and some attractive elements from a business standpoint, largely because it would enable Alberta to set its own personal tax policy. We can set our own rates right now, but we can't deviate largely from what the federal government has put in place. So if Alberta were to do this, there could be a way for Alberta as a jurisdiction to be a far more attractive place for people to work and to live because of our advantages from a personal tax standpoint. The example that was given in the video, and something that some of you may have had some serious concerns over, was the increase in the capital gains tax that the federal government proposed. They've since rolled that back, but if Alberta collected its own income tax at a personal level, we wouldn't be beholden to what is called the tax sharing agreement. So we could actually ignore Ottawa's increase on the capital gains tax, and in fact do something very unique, like something we've proposed, is to eliminate capital gains tax in Alberta to make it the most competitive jurisdiction for entrepreneurs and business owners and people that want to keep their wealth here in the province. So that, and for example, the pension plan also has some unique elements. If we could reduce the premiums that Albertans are paying towards that. So there's some inherent benefits from a ability to attract and retain the best and most outstanding workforce here in Alberta.
If only, Adam, thank you. I don't know why I wait so long to come to you, because that's just so good. If only we had, can you imagine if we had a former president of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation in the room to talk? Can you imagine?
You actually have two.
That's right, we do.
Mike Binion and myself.
That's true. My mistake, Andy. Go ahead.
So I'd like to speak in favor of this. I'll be voting for it. And the biggest reason for me, and again in the firewall letter, this is one of the ideas that we talked about. It comes back to Michael Binion's most excellent point. We have to demonstrate to the rest of Canada and Ottawa and anyone else who cares to listen, including ourselves, that we can run our own affairs. We can govern ourselves responsibly. And collecting our own taxes is just a huge, important symbol of doing that.
Thank you.
I'd turn it over to Mike.
No, he's got enough time tonight.
There's never enough time for Mike.
Do you know who I do want to turn it over to? And I should say to all of you, if you haven't made it to the microphone and there's something, burning desire to share on one of the other topics that we moved on from because we ran out of time, go ahead now, if you'd like to. Brandon Lunty, an MLA, I hear you talking about this from time to time, so go ahead. Let's get your perspective.
Well, thanks, Bruce. Thanks, everyone. I feel a little underqualified not having been the president of the Canadian Taxpayer Federation at any point in my career just yet. But just building on what was said and what Adam said, this is an opportunity for Alberta to set tax policy that we're proud of. We are proud to be the lowest tax jurisdiction in Canada, and if this is a way that we can keep that, then that's something we should seriously consider. We know the federal government kind of feels the opposite way. They've never met a tax they didn't like. So I think this is something that we should take a really good look at and be able to control our own tax policy. The capital gains example was mentioned. Final plug, it makes it easier for when we do tax cuts like our $750 per person personal income tax cut. It's just another way that demonstrates that we're able to make that more efficient.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, let's go to this mic.
Good evening. I'm Jeff, and I'm from Alberta. If after favorable referendum results on any of these issues, do the MLAs seated have the courage to actually do as Albertans wish and push these decisions through federally? I mean, the feds, they hold almost all the power here. And playing nice with the feds will guarantee that favorable referendum results will never be implemented. Talk is cheap. And unsurprisingly, that's all I've heard from the Premier and the other MLAs tonight. So again, will the MLAs hold themselves accountable to those referendum results? Otherwise, we're all just wasting our time.
Thanks, Jeff. Go ahead.
The question is relating to the taxes. Aren't you, it's just, because we already tax the businesses, the Alberta provincial government. So just by taxing individuals, aren't you just expanding that? Like, is that how you counted for the extra amount? You said it cost about $750 million to 1.5, but aren't you just expanding already on a structure you already have, an existing structure in Alberta?
It's a good point, and I don't know if there's someone on the panel who can give us a history lesson. So we get about $73 billion in revenues, and we collect most of it ourselves. We have corporate income tax we collect ourselves, fuel tax, electric vehicle tax, tobacco tax, vaping tax, tourism levy, education property tax, which the municipalities collect for us, freehold mineral rights, insurance premiums, and then a variety of fees and user fees and levies, as well as the entire complicated royalty structure. The amount that the feds collect of that $73 billion is about $15 billion. And so I guess that's the question, is why do we have the competence to collect tax on everything else except presumably on personal income tax? I don't know the historical anomaly that led to that, but that's part of the question that we're asking. But we would have to go through and develop an individual tax file for each individual income tax payer, similar to what we've had to do with all of these additional types of taxes that we get. So that's what would be the complication. And the feds would probably not ask us to collect their share on their behalf, although I know that has got a lot of enthusiasm if we just collected everything and then sent them the portion that we think we owe for their areas of federal jurisdiction, which would be much smaller than they take right now. But in practice, what would have to happen is it would be parallel, that we'd be setting up a separate structure, and the question would be, do we just get additional advantages from being 100% self-reliant rather than having the federal government collect that extra $15 billion for us.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tim from Red Deer. Tonight we've talked lots about financial circumstances, the way to equalize money flowing to Alberta and the unfairness of that. However, I'm here tonight to share with you a circumstance involving my 97-year-old father, who is in a care center in Red Deer. He was 4 months in a hospice. He survived a hospice. He's been in several hospitals throughout central Alberta, including Lacombe, Innisfail, Red Deer. In Red Deer, he has never spent less than 17 hours in emergency. He's 97, lying on a gurney. I've been there 5 times, Lacombe, Innisfail, etc. In my opinion, many of the topics tonight focus on dollars.
Yes.
I believe that Alberta does have dollars.
And you'd like to see
I am wondering why I have to walk into a care center, open the doors, and see rugs that are stained after 4 years.
Tim, I have so much compassion for you. Well, I have so much compassion, but like you're 2 minutes in, so what I'm going to suggest is this, okay? There are people here and staff and MLAs here. I hate that story with your father. So let's see how we can help him. Yeah, I don't like it at all that he went through that.
Sorry, I wasn't watching the time. So, my question is, could I ask a question?
Okay.
How does creating 2 ministries in healthcare help with increasing the number of healthcare assistants in his room to deal with the issues? The room is dirty. The people that are in there are unchanged.
Tim, not only are you over, you're not on topic. So we're going to try and help you. I take the point. Everybody takes the point. You heard the rules tonight. Let's talk about Alberta Next and what we do with the federal government. And I'll tell you what, I'll say a prayer for your dad. I will include him. I'll tell you, everybody here cares about that stuff. So find him, one of the staff people, and see if we can help his father. Let's go over here.
If I could try to bring it, I mean, all of this is connected, because if you look at our areas of jurisdiction versus the dollars that we receive, our areas of jurisdiction are expensive. It's hospitals, it's education, it's post-secondary, it's programs for the vulnerable, it's infrastructure. It's 70% of all of the tax dollars generated, but we only personally generate 40% of them. Ottawa generates 60%, and then they transfer some of it back to us with conditions, and then keep the rest and transfer it to the rest of Canada. That's part of the reason we're having this conversation, is if we could align the revenues that we receive with our responsibilities, then we'd be able to have more dollars to be able to address our areas of responsibility. That's one part. But the other part goes back to, if we could just develop our resources, as I mentioned earlier, just to give you the dollars, if we had built those 3 pipelines, $55 billion, provinces and the feds roughly get about 40% and split it 50-50. That's about $10 billion additional dollars that we would have year after year after year. That would go a long way to addressing the pressures in the classroom, building more schools, building more hospitals, and addressing the pressure in hospitals. We attempted, as a collective with the premiers, to get the federal government to reach its original commitment with us to fund healthcare 50-50. We were asking for $38 billion a year over 10 years. They agreed to $38 billion over 10 years, just to give you an idea of the level of mismatch that there is. So there's a reason we're talking about this. It's not money for the sake of money. It's money because we've got very expensive social services that people rely on us to deliver. And increasingly with this imbalance, aging population, higher need, more newcomers, we have programs that have become unsustainable with the level of revenues that we get. And that's part of the reason why we need to take more control and develop our economy.
Okay, let's go over here.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Batchelor, and I've lived in Airdrie for the past 5 years. I've lived in Alberta since my 18th birthday. To tie this into how it applies to federal as well, earlier a gentleman said that the government doesn't lead the people lead. And I'm wondering if the Alberta government would be willing to rise to that as an example. Here's my suggestion: to increase transparency, to remove the necessary needs of so many panels, why not everybody who has a portfolio, including the shadow cabinet, be required to spend 5 days each month in the industry they represent? You wouldn't need to be spending, at least what I looked up was like 1.9 million per panel, and some went to 300 million was for one. You could save so much money and time and actually hear the voices of Albertans.
Thank you. Go ahead over here.
Hi, I'm Shannon Chapin. I'm from Cremona, Alberta. Premier Smith, as someone who has campaigned twice for your election, I would like to say congratulations on your big win. Also, someone who is dead set against the COVID mandates, again, I would like to say thank you for honoring our rights of medical choice. It truly was a persecution I have never felt before. Carney has been in PM for 6 months, and in that time, the U.S. has brought over $1 trillion of investment. Meanwhile, Alberta has lost billions of potential revenue. According to the moosechart.ca, Carney has over 100 conflicts of interest, like ATCO, General Electric, several modular housing companies. He is also a climate zealot. CO2 is essential for our vegetation to grow, and that we're already net zero. My question is, the Alberta Accord, with the Alberta Accord terms coming due soon in October, what is the contingency plan in place in case Carney does not meet those terms? I hope we hold the line and not bend the knee.
Okay. So I would just say to 45 seconds, please, and let's try and keep on Alberta Next. But Premier, that was close enough that you might want to.
I wonder if Rebecca Schultz would like to weigh in on this, because I think she's the reason why we no longer have Stephen Guilbeault as Environment Minister. She did a great job getting rid of that guy. I'll be very frank with you. I have told the Prime Minister that Justin Trudeau created the separatist sentiment in this province, and it's only going to be undoing the terrible laws and getting us back to a point where we can build again and develop wealth again that might succeed in deflating that movement. But it's got to take action now. It's no longer words, and that's why when he says he's aiming to have a new project list out by Grey Cup, which is November 16th, I'm looking at that as a deadline. Then I want to see a bitumen pipeline to the West Coast on that one. Did you have anything to add, Minister?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think, what we've been hearing across the province is similar to what I've certainly been hearing from people over the last 2 years. Premier did ask me to serve in this role, and one of the greatest challenges of my life has been sitting across the table from Minister Guilbeault when he tells me that, wolves don't kill caribou, our industry does, or that judgments from the highest court in our country are just opinions and he doesn't have to listen to them. And I think when we look at the long litany, Premier put them in a list of the 9 negotiables for Alberta from the federal government. They say now we have a new Prime Minister, same government, new face at the top. They say they want to be an energy superpower, yet we still have a tanker ban on the East Coast. We still have Bill C-69, their magical piece of legislation in the spring does not erase the fact that we have legislation in place that is unconstitutional and drives away investment in projects that aren't on their magical list. We have the clean electricity regulation, the net zero power grids that they expect to put in that would cost us $1.7 trillion, would leave us at risk of being in the cold in the middle of winter, not having air conditioning in the middle of summer. And that's not just Alberta, and it's not just our government, it's independent electricity regulators across the country saying that this is absolutely not doable. We still have a production cap, an oil and gas emissions cap. It's a production cap that is still in place, that would drive away investment that no other energy producing nation would ever do to their industry. It will kill tens of thousands of jobs, and it will hurt our economy, not just here in Alberta, but right across Canada. And then we have them saying, you know, we're going to build a pipeline. Premier is right. We need to fight for that pipeline. We do understand how important it is. Not just one pipeline. The bitumen pipeline is very important. We need to also get our natural gas to all of the folks around the world who are looking to us as a responsible energy producer for their needs of safe, affordable, reliable energy. And now for us in Canada, it's also become a matter of national security and energy security. So what we have, I think, what we're lucky to have in Alberta is a premier who is fighting on all fronts, because we do need a pipeline, but unless they get rid of that entire list of those policies that are driving away investment, the pipelines will be empty. And I've said to my new counterpart, you know, I don't want to be a cynic, but I sure hope that that's not what you're working towards. And I think the Premier's done a great job of pointing out to this federal government that we need to essentially shelve the radical activist environmental policy that's being driven by the NGOs right now. And put the well-being of everyday Albertans and Canadians at the forefront of the decisions that we make. And, you know, to the question that was asked, I hear it every single day that there is a lot of uncertainty out here in this world, and there's uncertainty south of the border too. But despite the uncertainty with tariffs and policies south of the border, investment is going to the U.S. over Canada every single day, and we are very grateful, I think. Certainly I am, and I think Albertans are lucky to have a premier who not only believes in direct democracy and meetings like this where we can talk about ideas, but who is unashamedly defending our industries and the well-being of our people.
Excellent. So you hit on something, Minister, that we haven't talked enough about tonight, and we have an expert ag analyst. We have an expert ag individual, runs a farm, former president of the Chamber of Commerce, on our panel. Melody, can you speak to some of what you just heard, maybe our food supply, how all of this ties in?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think to build on what Minister Schultz was saying when we're talking about environmental policy and security, we need to talk about food security, folks, because we all have one thing in common every day: we eat. And Albertans produce amazing quality food. But we're being stymied right now with environmental policy and the need for our farmers and ranchers to have these certain criteria and checklists in place to access programs that will help make them competitive on the global scale. So we don't always equate food with federal government, but there is a stymie there. So I just want us to be aware of that as we're moving forward, that any type of policy, whether it's a requirement for environment, whether it's, you know, a requirement around social, that it will cost more for the farmer and rancher to produce, which means you're going to pay more. So this is something we have to look at. Bruce, I also just want to take 5 seconds, and I want to address a comment that was made earlier about who's in this room. I understand as a panelist, and I'll even say this on behalf of the other panelists, we understand that this may not be statistically representative of Alberta as to the demographics and necessarily the viewpoints. But you have another option as well with the survey. We are listening. And that's where I think it goes back to Mr. Schultz's comments about democracy. If you want us to listen, you have to show up. If you don't show up, we can't listen. It's very simple. So show up and do the work.
Excellent. Okay, so we've got a few more people that we haven't heard from tonight that are at the microphones, and let's try to get through them. I promise we're going to save some time for the Premier to close us off tonight, but first let's start here.
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm an Albertan. Just to say the demographics as well, they're probably younger ones at home doing homework and taking the kids to hockey. So I'm here to represent my family in that regard, and I'll take what we hear tonight home. I want to talk about the Alberta Wallet. I'm an IT project manager for over 20 years, and the data mining that's happening on everybody's phone, and everybody's joyous, and we've spent $12 million on this project. I wasn't asked if I want to do that, and I don't want to put my Alberta healthcare or my certificates or my trade certificates or anything else on that. Why did we not do what Manitoba did and just get a plastic card? Nate, who is the IT minister, and his deputy, who is also of the global governments group, which also concerns me, This is a slippery slope.
Okay.
How did we get here?
We'll answer the question, but again, on topic with Alberta. Premier, I'd ask you to answer this because we made an announcement today that makes some sense.
Well, we've got 530,000 additional healthcare cards than we have people living in Alberta. And that should concern every taxpayer in this room. I don't know who they are. I don't know if they've passed on and they didn't cancel their card. I don't know if they've moved to another province and then come back here when they need healthcare. I don't know if they've moved to another country and then move back here if they need to have healthcare. But we can't have that. We owe it to taxpayers to make sure that the system is not being abused fraudulently. That being said, you don't need to use the wallet if you don't want to. I mean, I've got my insurance slips on my wallet card, but we're also going to be adding the healthcare number to your driver's license so that we always have some confirmation that the person who is receiving the healthcare has picture ID and an address in Alberta so that we can make sure that we're preventing fraud. And the Auditor General asked us to do this because he was the one who pointed out that we have no tracking. So if you don't want to use the wallet card, don't have to. The plastic card will be out next year.
Thank you. Over here.
Stan McNutt from Airdrie, Alberta, but I was born in BC, lived in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and 7 years in Quebec. On the constitutional change, mention was made about the Senate, and came up briefly on the video, but in the discussion it was just about the representation from provinces. I submit to you that it's time to get rid of the Senate totally. They were in place, like you said, for a reason, but they're far overstepping their bounds now. They're becoming the government of Canada, so it's time to get rid of them. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask everyone to hold their comments up here until we get to our microphones. Go ahead over here on this side. Hope maybe you okay? Yep.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Ken, Airdrie, pertaining to the oil pipeline. Stop pushing in. Tell you what you do. Get the gas. Let's refine our own fuel. Let's create our own Alberta gas stations. Let's sell gas for 65 cents a litre. Give us Albertans a hell of a deal. Guess what'll happen, Premier? The door at your place will get crushed in by every other province and every other country saying, gimme, 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 gimme. So stop pushing the pipeline. Why don't we just refine our own fuel, open up corner gas, 65, 70 cents a litre, no problem.
Thanks.
And then without you having to push the pipeline on these Quebecers and on crossing lands and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
They will come crushing.
I'm going to ask Premier just to wait. If you want to touch on it in the end, you can. Over here.
I'm Ken, born and raised in Alberta. My question is, when you listen to our government and they get an opinion from the Supreme Court of Canada that tells them they were wrong and they simply disregard it, what do we as Albertans and Canadians, for that matter, do about that? Is there anything legal we can do?
Okay, we'll add it to the end if we need to address it. Over here. Last question from the mic.
Okay, acupuncture has been a core component of primary care in China for thousands of years. Given that natural medicine like TCM and acupuncture can address a range of health issues, including our mental health and drug epidemic, are we considering similar integration into Alberta's primary care network to alleviate some of our financial pressure on Alberta's health services, much like the successful model we've seen with midwifery and obstetrics?
Dr. Benny, would that be a good idea?
I think it's a great idea.
How much did you pay that lady? Pull yourself together.
I think we should ask the Premier.
How about?
Do advocate for that because we do have. I'm taking a closer look at all of our pharmacare programs. We've got pharmacare programs for seniors, for those who don't have a private plan, as well as for those who are on AISH. And there's a very small limitation on how much we pay towards those preventative types of care, including chiropractic massage therapy. And so talk to our minister, Adriana LaGrange, to see if there's a way that we can expand that, because that's my mandate to her. So if we can keep people healthy and keep them out of hospital, then we're going to be able to reduce healthcare costs.
Here, here.
People will live a much longer, healthier life, too.
Here. Okay, is everybody Sorry, did I cut you off? I'm sorry if I did. No. Has everybody had a good night? It's been great being in Airdrie tonight. So let's do this. Premier, can you give us some closing thoughts on what you've heard tonight? Maybe wrap in some of the last comments if you'd like, and just a message on where we're going next with Alberta Next.
I don't know if that gentleman was serious when he said to start selling our product at a discount. You know, that's the Quebec model. We might actually run a $10 or $12 billion deficit.
Exactly.
Maybe we could ask them to pay us some equalization. So maybe there's, I don't know if you were being intentionally humorous about that, but that is the Quebec model. That's how Quebec rolls, is that they pay for more expensive social programs than any other province enjoys. And then they run deficits. They don't realize the full value of their economy, their resources, their electricity. And they ask for the rest of the country to pay to subsidize them at the same time as historically said we don't want any more development of Alberta oil. So we have to wonder, how did we get to this situation? I think that whole scenario just really encapsulates what has been growing and building in frustration for Albertans. I think Albertans are generous. I really do. I think Albertans are generous not only with the dollars that they share with the rest of the country, but also generous in inviting people to come here and help us to develop our economy and our wealth as well. But things have just gone too far. They've gone too far in the last 10 years of a federal government saying we're going to do everything we can to put barriers in the way. It's gone too far in the out-of-control immigration policy that is putting pressure on every single public service. And that's why I think we're having this conversation is, can we do practical things that assert our areas of jurisdiction in the same way that Quebec has, and see if we can get better outcomes? I think you've heard from the panelists tonight, and maybe we weren't able to do it when we were only 70,000 people when we first formed as a government. Maybe we couldn't do it in the 30s when we went bankrupt. Maybe we couldn't even do it at the beginning phase of the development of our energy sector. But now we're 5 million people. We're the third largest economy. We've got one of the largest complements of natural resources in the entire world. Maybe it is time to move down that pathway of responsible government, because we can and we should. And so that's what we're asking Albertans, if you want us to go down that pathway. Maybe in prior consultations the time wasn't right, but maybe it's right now. And so thank you so much for participating in this conversation. We're looking forward to continuing.
We've just got a couple of cities left on this tour, and then I think one more virtual town hall, and then we'll compile all of this and report back to you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Can you give the panel a round of applause for being here too? Thank you.